Hello, hi, sweet lovely people. My name is Jess Marie and welcome back. Today I am feeling a little bit raspy in my voice. I decided not to talk until this moment right now, so hearing my voice and how it's going to translate on film, I'm really excited for, but it's just the way she goes. I need to warm it up somehow. I gotta call my dad at some point and talk to him, but yeah, it just is what it is. Nope, I did talk to the cat this morning. I was trying to call him. He sits up on the bunk bed and we're down. We have our bed on the floor. I'm like, Sam, Sammy, come snuggle. And I was singing like this song and yeah. So, so last night, Rob and I, we watched this series and it comes on after Jeopardy, so we watch like different ones throughout the months, and we don't even know when it's on. Like, we don't even see the advertisements for it, and then it's just like, hey, what do you want to watch next? And then it's just on. And they do different eras in time and they'll segment it. So last night we were watching the 60s, and the first segment, it's an hour long if you consider commercials as well, so it's an hour-long block, and just talked about the TV evolution and how color was introduced to the mainstream, into TV, and how in the 60s everybody at that point had a TV. Everybody who really had the money for it, and that was most people, most working class people had the money for it. Yeah, there's some people even now who don't have TVs, who don't have cell phones, but it was something that it was so common, and the news sources were able to get out to those people and get out to more people. So everybody knew about JFK right as it happened, and they were all watching it on screen, asking for updates. They heard he was shot and in the drive when he was driving, and or in the parade, whatever you want to say. And then it was like, yeah, he's injured. Like, nobody said that he died right away, and it was just like this constant follow-up on it. And it talked about, ooh, I love late night. Not now, I don't like the late night TV shows now, but back in the day, because they had all kinds of guests. You know how the Joe Rogan podcast, he has all kinds of people who comes onto the podcast, and not just within the music industry or within the fighting industry. It's all across the board. That's how these people used to do it back in the day. They used to have their talk show, their little hosting show, and have all kinds of acts, circus acts, magicians, a poetry reading, a Shakespeare reading, all these kinds of things. And it was pure entertainment. It was so beautifully crafted, and that we just don't see anymore, not in the same capacity. Yeah, we have like I said, Joe Rogan podcast, but I personally don't know anybody else who does something like that. I guess like Saturday Night Live skits were kind of cool, but they were just skits. They had different people from the acting industry or the music industry show up on their thing, but nothing really more. Sorry, coughing. There's little Sambo. Hi, baby. And yeah, I love this era of time, and it was amazing too when color started becoming a thing on the TV. People started to wear color more, and that bright, colorful era of the 60s really showed itself, really stapled that idea, that look. And oh, I love the 60s so much for so many different reasons, and some of them are a little bit more tragic. Every era kind of has its negativity, it has its wars, it has its conflicts, it has its political movements. Maybe not so much the 90s. The 90s was a slow year, but that's okay. Everybody needs a break. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in comparison to the last century, the 90s were kind of slow in that sense. I think we watched this first part of the TV, and then the second part was about the Vietnam War, and most of us know kind of about what it is. You know, North America went over to fight communism, and it really explained like Lyndon didn't really have a plan. Lyndon Johnson. I love how I know his first name. Lyndon didn't really have a plan. He was the president of the USA, and he didn't have a plan. He had no strategic plan how to defeat them, and there were just so many people who were dying innocently, and they were burning down houses or little huts over in Vietnam, and it was unbelievable to watch. And I've seen stuff like that before. I'm not trying to act censored to it, like I've never seen it before. But to hear that there was no strategy, that there was no plan, and they just went over there and kept sending men because they saw the threat of communism, that wasn't just within that one area. It was because they didn't want, China was already communist, and I think, I don't know if North Korea was, or Korea, I don't know what was going on there, but it was the whole threat of Asia becoming that, and the USSR was up there as well, so I guess like they are such a large portion already that they didn't want that whole side to become this toxic breed of communists. And yeah, I get why modern day communism is bad. It's dictatorship. People don't really have as much of a choice in a lot of things that are taken, because there's not this balance that written on paper, communism sounds great, but when it's always acted upon, no leader has been able to influence it, be able to act upon it in an appropriate manner that is really people for the people, that we are all working in a commune together and supporting one another, people for the people. People are working for the betterness of one another, the community. And I think it's because it's done on such a large scale, and there always has to be some kind of leader. There always has to be some kind of setter of the rules and make sure people are following them, because you have to have law and order. People who are wanting to try and get rid of law and order right now, like, I'm all for changing up the system, but you cannot get rid of law and order, because without law and order there will be chaos. It's not defunding the police, just like abolishing the police. You have to have an entire new setup. You can't just ask them to abolish something and have no backup plan, because we need law and order, or else things are going to be chaos. People don't have to follow driving rules. People don't have to follow alcohol rules. You know, just little things like that, you need people to be able to enforce stuff like this. With communism, it's written out really well on paper, but no one has been able to execute it in a correct manner. I think it's really fascinating that there was no plan when they went to Vietnam. There was this increase. Everybody in the US, they had to get drafted, and people started burning their draft paper saying, hey, no, you are not having us fight this war that means nothing, that has no background to it, because you don't believe in their ideology. There's nothing like what our parents fought, speaking of them, but when in the 40s, they were fighting to save Europe against somebody who was legitly evil, somebody who was legitly massacring an entire race, essentially, or an entire religion. That's a better word to use. I think I'm mostly trying to figure it out in my own head, because I'm learning, and that's the best thing in life, is to keep learning. And there was one point where I think it was like CBC or NBC, somebody had posted on their news channel about the war, and they said the amount of innocent people who had died, the amount of civilians in South Korea who had died, or in Korea in general, or not Korea, sorry, Vietnam, and then the amount of huts that were burned, the amount of homes that were burned, and the amount of US soldiers that had passed. And Lyndon Johnson had called the person who runs the news station, is like, basically you're shitting on the US flag. Why would you post something like that? Why would you air that information? And that's where I think the real control of media started coming in, is because of the Vietnam War. TV was so accessible, and the president is saying, hey, what are you doing sharing this information? This is not for everybody to hear, even though everybody is tuned in hearing about the war, because people are getting conscripted into the war basically. And it started the controlled media, and I think then they really figured out how they can control the narrative when it comes to what's going on in the world. We have the power. If everybody is looking on their telly for the information, we have the control to share with them what we choose. And it's very prominent today. You know what I think is disgusting? Is that today we're fighting a silent killer. As a whole, as the entire globe, we are fighting a silent enemy, or an invisible enemy. We cannot see it, but we are all actively trying to protect ourselves from it. And every day on the news, you know what we see? We see a tally of how many people in our province has gotten this disease, this illness, and that's disgusting to me. So we weren't allowed to share this information back in the 60s, but now it's like, oh, it's because it's a virus, we're gonna scare you by saying how many people have gotten this illness. That I think is wrong. That I think is very wrong, and it's instilling fear in so many people. I think is so friggin' wrong. If it was any other type, if it was a war, I'm really surprised that we haven't gotten into a major war, because I don't believe the Vietnam War ever settled. I don't think it ever ended, because the program last night just ended, and I asked Rob, like, did it ever end? Like, is it still going on now? And he said, yeah, I can imagine that there's still troops having keeping civilness, keeping peace. Same with Afghanistan, a very similar situation. I think that happened in like the 80s, that was around then. And now, so there's all these little things, and I 100% thought that the 20s, this is going to be the time that we get into a war. I didn't want to have kids. I decided at a young age I didn't want to have kids. I changed my mind, but it was for this reason of war, because I didn't want to have a child in war times because of all the propaganda, all this fear, all this. I don't think God would blow us up with a nuke, but we are in a really scary time of technology where it is so unbelievably powerful, and so many of us are sheep that we wouldn't even know. There could be wars going on right now and we wouldn't even know, because we're all distracted by this stupid virus. Know how many laws have been passed through because we are so blinded to just seeing this virus? Even before, the news wouldn't have shown stuff like that. But if I could say anything, is do some research, do your homework, and look outside of the box. Stop watching the news, stop watching online media, and actually try to find some information of laws being passed in the world right now and things that are changing that we are not seeing, and be a catalyst to that. Be a vocal activist about that. For me right now, my choice is I'm focusing on drug and alcohol. I'm really looking into information about that and how COVID is killing like this amount of people, and drug and alcohol is killing, I guess I need to do smaller. But drug and alcohol is killing so much more people. That was a really bad visual example. But it's frustrating because drugs and alcohol have been around for so friggin' long. And now it's like, oh, there's this virus that's coming around and it's killing like 50 people a day. Okay, you know how many people are addicted and have suffered emotional pain and emotional trauma for so many years? Are you kidding me right now? That you want to talk about this virus? when there's people who are hurting, people who are losing their family, people who can't even reach for help anymore. Are you kidding me? That this is the only thing that's killing people right now? Absolutely, it's bogus to me. I still wear my mask everywhere, but it's freaking bogus. Okay, I'm gonna peace out. I'm going to go home, make some eggs and some toast perhaps, and probably do a little bit more research. This was really just I need to figure out what I'm talking about. I'm not concrete in any of my information. These are just facts and information I'm presenting from my mind. And yeah, I shouldn't say facts, but information being presented from my mind. Thank y'all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. And yeah, bye.